Hello folks, the White Guy here again. Welcome to my home on this very beautiful but yet cold and drizzly winter day. The name of this video is called The White Guy Critical Thinking. And I'm not going to be critical about the weather. No, not today. Maybe tomorrow. Anyway, a person must, and I do mean must, apply critical thinking to learn something new, or at the very least be challenged about something that they think is true. Okay, the story of my life, man. It is. That's the reason I wrote these 3 books. I'm gonna be bringing these up into this video here a little bit, along with this a Greek New Testament that I have here. Okay, I'm not referring to, when I say critical thinking, I'm not referring to criticizing someone who just happens to believe a little differently than you do, but we're all guilty of doing that from time to time, okay? But I'm talking about the true biblical definition of discernment, you see, and which requires critical thinking. Now I'm saying the true, let me level this a little. Oh goodness, sorry about that. Hope I didn't rock your world that much. Anyway, I come from an evangelical background, and of course, there are people all running around saying, I have the gift of discernment. There's no such thing, folks. Sorry to pop your bubble on that one. There just is no such thing. Because if you knew what the true definition of discernment was, discerning of spirits is what they always use, and they think that there's some invisible spirits flying around, doing their stuff on people. No. It's discerning. The word spirits in there means attitude in the Greek. Okay? Judging an attitude is what discerning of spirits means. All right, so okay, I got that behind us. Anyway, as far as critical thinking, Wikipedia, quote, says critical thinking is this, quote, critical thinking is an analysis of facts to form a judgment, okay, which generally includes the rational, skeptical, unbiased analysis or evaluation of factual evidence, close quote. You notice how it says how it's not an analysis or evaluation of what a person believes. You notice that? But rather an analysis and an evaluation of evidence that's based on facts. Some of what is written in Scripture is well grounded in truth, for sure. And some of those truths were for specific people, for specific reasons, for a specific time. And they're not true for everyone, for all time. I'm hoping you're catching that, a little nuance there. However, there are many truths that were written in the Bible, what I call self-contextualizing, that do indeed apply to all people for all time, no matter what the context of to whom or when it was written. And this is where discernment, i.e. critical thinking, enters the picture. The Bible calls it rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, obviously from words that are not true. Okay, so now here's my plug for these 3 books that I showed you a second ago. What I'm talking about right now, this is the approach that I took when writing my 3 books. Maybe I can just do all 3 like this. Okay, in defense of God's love, you can see the side, and is God bipolar, and no love, no fear. Okay, that's the approach I took when I wrote these 3 books. And because there are far too many examples within Scripture that I discovered where critical thinking is so necessary. If it wasn't for that, I would have never wrote these. I never would have. But I will now offer the 2 most obvious areas where I rationally analyze and evaluate factual evidence of both words, Hades and hell. I know I've what do they call it? Dragging a dead horse through the mud. I realize I've hit on this so many times in so many different videos, but sometimes a reminder helps a little bit. And this is going to be a little bit different, just a little bit. It only takes the smallest amount of research to discover the factual evidence of how, at times, ancient Latin church actually inserted, I'm not talking about translated, but they inserted the word infernum, which means hell in English, into the Greek manuscripts, then was later canonized into what we now call the Bible. Inserted. You got that? I'm now going to apply critical thinking to why they possibly did such a thing. Sure, they had an agenda, blah, blah, blah. We already know about that. Agenda to control people using fear. And yes, they obviously capitalized on the pagan beliefs of their people that was already entrenched in the minds of the ignorant. Yes, for sure. However, they had to somehow justify it as legit. So what was the standard they used for promoting the hell doctrine? What was the standard? I'll give you a hint by saying that most of the time hell was written in Scripture, it was a direct translation from the Greek word Hades. It just was. So as justification, where did the ancient Latin church get the Greek word Hades from? Answer. From the Greek Septuagint, written around 132 BC, or I should say completed around 132 BC. You see, about 30 years prior to this, the Greek Septuagint, the Greek government made a decree that required everyone to adhere to a state religion of Greek mythology and the acknowledgement of Zeus, Apollo, Hades, and etc. I mean, that acknowledging that's obviously Greek mythology. See, this caused or added to a brewing civil war with the Jews called the Maccabee War, circa 167 to 160 BC. So critical thinking tells me this, that approximately 30 years after the Jewish uprising, a compromise was made when publishing the Septuagint. See, it takes critical thinking to think this way, all right? So what was the compromise? How about substituting the Hebrew word, Sheol, with the Greek word, Hades? All right? Okay, follow me. So due to the law, or I should say because of the law, the decree that was in the minds, this new law, the decree, was in the minds of the non-Jewish citizens. The Jews, you see, folks, the Jews couldn't be singled out and offered any kind of favoritism. So the word Hades, as meaning the king of the underworld, and the name also given to the pagan Greek hell, okay, that word was incorporated into Judaism at that time. I'll prove it here in a minute. The Jews didn't fall for it then or now, but the bulk of Christianity still swallows it, hook, line, and sinker. Factual evidence? From my book, Is God Bipolar? I'm going to take a quote out of it from this one here, because, anyway, quote, according to Wikipedia, the Maccabean Revolt was a Jewish rebellion lasting from 167 to 160 BC, led by the Maccabees against the Seleucid Empire and the Hellenistic influence on Jewish life, close quote. All right? Now, critical thinking requires us to ask the obvious question of what was the influence on Jewish life that could have caused a war? See, critical thinking? The same side answered it this way, and I quote, in the narrative of the Maccabees, after Antiochus IV, I'm probably saying his name right, issued his decrees forbidding Jewish religious practice. A rural Jewish priest, Mattathias from Modin, and I'm sure I'm saying these names wrong, and I apologize, he sparked the revolt against the Seleucid, the Greek Empire at that time, by refusing to worship the Greek gods, close quote. Do you remember when I said they didn't fall for it then? So in other words, the Greeks caused and possibly instigated a Jewish civil war because the Greeks tried to enforce a conversion to their pagan faith, which would require the use of the Greek language. Critical thinking. So, you know, Amazon publishing didn't exist at the time, so it took a couple of hundred years for the birth of the Septuagint starting around 300 BC until its completion at 132 BC. See, the Maccabee War was most definitely brewing during this whole process. So, my point, I'm coming close to a close here. Just because an erroneous Greek pagan word, such as Hades, is used in the Greek text, it doesn't make it valid. Just because it's a Greek New Testament doesn't make it valid. Are you following me? And by the way, I love this Greek New Testament. This is one of the finest ones I've come across. Okay, it's by Jonathan Mitchell. Get his name down there, you see. And I've had dialogue with him back and forth, well, email back and forth with him about these very things I'm talking about. Okay, and I should have brought out the emails with me so I could have just shared that with you. But anyway, he knows how bogus some of this stuff is, but he wanted to appeal to a broad range of believers. All right, and that's kind of what he told me. Anyway, if the word Hades wasn't used to replace the word Sheol in the Greek Septuagint, I highly doubt it would have found its place in any Greek New Testament. Or any New Testament, period. Because remember how the Latins had to have a reason for changing the word Hades into hell? There had to be Hades in the first place in order to do that. So, at the time that the Septuagint was written, and due to the root meaning of the word Hades, then, because of that, and then by applying critical thinking while researching ancient Greek history, that's what I've done, and culture, this tells me that Hades does not belong in Scripture, no more than the pagan Latin word infernum, hell, does. Okay? So I challenge anyone to ask the common believer what Hades represents, and just about everyone will say hell. Do it. Prove me wrong. Okay? So by promoting and endorsing Hades, you're promoting hell in the minds of most people. You just are. You're simply substituting one pagan belief for another one, and shooting yourself in the foot and subconsciously slandering the good news message in doing so. That doesn't make sense. So get this, in most cases, the very same people who claim that Scripture is in error due to the use of the word hell will claim Hades is okay, because it just simply means, just one example, unseen. Well, let's hit on that just for a second in closing this video. Or it simply means, Hades simply means Sheol. Those two are the two biggies, all right? And they'll defend their position just like hell believers do in defending the word hell. I find that fascinating and idiotic at the same time, because it makes no sense. So I'm going to conclude this video by briefly addressing the word unseen. The word unseen means clandestine in the Greek, Koine Greek, clandestine, hidden, and secretive, along with a few others, but those three are the main ones, okay? Every ancient Greek uncle and their cousin, all right, knew exactly what Hades meant. They knew exactly what it was. And there was nothing clandestine, hidden, or secretive about it. All right? So in literature, there's story after story about the place, as well as describing the god Hades, or the king Hades, who ruled the place. So stop trying to push this false, indoctrinated narrative that it means unseen, because it don't. This is from an opinionist, yours truly, and a critical thinker, the Why Guy. All right? So look me up on Facebook under a group called the Why Guy Group. It's a private group. Also, I have an open timeline under speaking of fake, under an avatar name of John Anthony Jones. You can check me out first before even thinking about joining the Why Guy Group. Here on this video, I'm going to leave a link to these down in the Show Me More section, a link to these three. All right, these three books from Amazon, I have published on Amazon. And I'm going to leave also a link to how you can support this channel through either Ko-fi or Patreon. If you are going to leave a comment, because most believers that I know totally disagree with me about the word Hades. You just do. And that's okay. That's okay. You're going to have to prove me wrong, other than just saying, well, it was in the Greek Septuagint, and that's the oldest biblical manuscript that we have in English, and blah, blah, blah. I just gave you the history of the Maccabee War, folks. All right? And why it was in the Septuagint. I believe that from my critical thinking and my research. If you can prove me otherwise, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong. I just hope that maybe you can do the same. Thank you for viewing.